and we'll put them, put the pilot in that particular area, and then make sure that it works properly before we put anything out there. Once we do find a product that works or a technology that works, we'll immediately go to training. We kind of do like a almost six-sided approach, just like we do with searching a building, and that's we'll send it out, stuff on our diamond plate. We'll have LMS, which is another system, a learning management system that we have, as well as going to do some face-to-face training and also some hands-on training with that as well, to make sure that everybody knows how to use it properly, because technology is only as good as the people who know how to use it.
Right, and how often are those training classes held?
It would all depend on what kind of technology that we're implementing, how often that we do that. Most of the time we'll go by whatever the NFPA standards are. When we first initially introduce something to the field, we make sure that we have a lot more training involved with it at that time than when it's out there and people are regularly using it. But we have a drill periods each day in each firehouse, and also EMS has a drill period as well, where we're looking at stuff for at least an hour a day and working with our tools and equipment to make sure we know how to use it properly, and even that new folks coming into the firehouse know where it is, how to use it, and how to work proficiently with it.
I do notice that you brought some cadets with you today, so I just want to say to the cadets, you should be proud, because you're entering a wonderful department, and you never know, one of you may be sitting up here, so pay attention. One day it may be you that's being questioned by, another set of council members. But I'm really glad that you did bring the cadets. It's important that they know what happens. So, you mentioned earlier that firefighting equipment has changed from when maybe you started to now. Can you just give us like what type of improvements have happened, with the gear that and the equipment over the years?
Sure, absolutely. One of the biggest changes, obviously, was when we got bunker gear in 1993, which was the result of a Watch Street fire right here in Manhattan, where 3 of our firefighters were lost. At that time, then the city council, along with the mayor at the time, Mayor Giuliani, made sure that we got bunker gear at that point. A lot of the country was using it at that point. We were one of the last departments to move in that direction. Not sure of the reasons why. Obviously, I was a brand new firefighter then. But that was one of the biggest technological changes for us, was getting that on. A lot of different training and a lot of came of that. When we're in our full bunker gear ensemble now, even with the latest and greatest, which we're always trying out, having vendors come in and approaching our research development almost on a weekly basis. Even with that ensemble, every firefighter you see walking into a building with their breathing device and bunker gear on has over 100 pounds of equipment on them. So, they're getting a full workload, and we have to make sure that that gear breathes right, works right, and that we're able to operate in that to help protect the citizens of New York. So that's been the greatest advance. Again, I couldn't help but watching those drone footage before, which is an incredible advance for me as an incident commander. When I think about 1991, when I first came on, we would have to describe to the incident commander what we saw and what was happening, and he would have to draw a visual, or she would have to draw a visual in their mind as to what we were describing as we were at that level. That was before the advent of cell phones and everything being out there. So it's just incredible to see how now we get that in there. It also helps us save police aviation. We team up with police aviation. We put a battalion chief to do air recon. They go to Floyd Bennett Field, and then they'll fly them to wherever our fire ground was. So most of the time, as an incident commander on scene at a large-scale emergency, I can turn that asset back now, and then that way the police can use their asset for what they need it for, and we have that drone footage that's providing the most amazing information to us. We also have our handy-talkie, our radios, which again, when I first came on, every member of the department didn't have a radio on. So now every member of our department has a radio with an emergency alert button, so that we're able to communicate if we get in any kind of trouble on the fire ground or on the emergency ground. So we're able to communicate that to the incident commander, and we're able to get help much faster and much quicker than what we would have been in the 1990s, so to speak. So we're always on the cutting edge of everything that happens technologically. And being the largest fire department in the country, second largest in the world, but still, I think we're the best in the world. We're always having people come in to do what we need them to do and show us all their latest and greatest stuff, because if they have it, we'd like to see it and see if it can help save some citizens.
That's wonderful. And when the bunker gear, needs replacement, or the Scott packs, or any apparatus that you spoke about, I know that a lot of times when we fund things, procurement can take forever. What is the time frame from the time that you need the new apparatus to the time that you get it?
So if you're referring to a fire apparatus, the department is under contractual obligation to replace at certain timelines as negotiated with the city. So we work with our fiscal department and OMB to ensure that the funding is in place in order for us to get purchase orders in place and deal with the vendor to do our best to meet those obligations of mandatory replacements.
As far as bunker gear replacement goes, we have a quartermaster system located out of Fort Totten in Queens, where if a member has gear that for some reason that we need to retire or put out of service because of something it's been exposed to, what we can do then is send the member to Fort Totten, to that quartermaster system. They could get replacement gear almost immediately that day or the next day, whenever they get the chance to go there. So we have stuff in stock on a regular basis to make sure we're able to do that.
Do my colleagues have any questions right now? Okay. Then I shall continue. So I want to talk about the CAD system. So what enhancements, if any, has the department made to their computer-aided dispatch or CAD system?
So this would not be my area of expertise, but I know that the CAD system was recently updated on the fire side. I believe EMS is going into a contract, or they have an RFI out there right now to look for vendors to see who's going to make up that CAD system. Evan probably would be able to speak a little bit better about the EMS system. But the fire system was just recently done. They had a couple of little tweaks in the beginning, just like any new computer system that goes citywide. But I think that they've corrected everything that they've had, any issues that they might have had. And I know that the fire side is, when I talk to the folks in communications, extremely happy with the product that they have, and it was developed. The one we had before that was from 1971, so you can imagine that it was long overdue to be replaced.
Oh, agreed.
So it's a much more efficient and proficient system, and, for the fire side. And I know EMS should be working their way towards that soon.
Yeah, just like Chief Meyer says, it's really not my area of expertise, but I know that the entire technology department, uses the best of their abilities to support the historical legacy system and keep it up and running while they're moving towards procuring a new system.
Okay, when the department needs more resources, such as technological advances in equipment, what are the steps that you take to ensure that this is needed? And are there any federal constraints that the department encounters when looking to expand their technological equipment used in firefighting and emergency medical services?
Usually the steps that we would go to, again, would first be to identify the product. We'd have to see what we wanted or what we thought would be helpful to both the department and also making sure that, it works for the citizens in New York City. So what we would do at that point is we would have a discussion with operations and the chief of department and commissioner's office if we really needed something or thought something would really enhance our operations, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. At that point, we actually, federal, we don't really have constraints as far as that goes. A lot of time we get a lot of our new stuff through grant funding. And we also get it, thankfully, from you folks in the city council working with us as well. Almost every council member comes to the department at some point during the year and to our borough commanders and offers help, which we greatly appreciate in getting those tools and technologies out there, because it does cut down on the process that would ordinarily take. I would say if we saw something we like today on an ordinary basis, it takes about 2 years for us after we pilot it and then to be able to purchase it and get it in service. With training, that would take about 2 years. By working with the city council and also working with our grant partners, with our grant office who works with federal and state, a lot of times we can cut down on that significantly, where we'd get that in service probably in about within a year, so it cuts it in the time in half.
Thank you. They appreciate it. Let's talk about the marine fire suppression operation. How many vessels are there in the department right now?
Again, not my area of expertise. I would go with, I believe marine unit-wise, I know we have 3 stations. We probably have about, I think we have 2 big boats, one in Staten Island, one in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan. So I'd say three of the larger scale boats. And then we have probably about 20 to 25 smaller vessels that can respond much more quickly. And then during the summer, we also put units in service, you know, in the areas that are more used by our residents, you know, for water recreation. And then a lot more boats on the water during the summer. So I would say roughly about 20 units go in service to assist with that effort as well, making sure that, again, we can protect the people in New York who are on the water as well as on the land.
Yeah, you were almost down one, so I'm glad you got it back. That was a very important one, actually. And how often do the vessels require maintenance?
So I would say, again, that much like fleet services, I would think marine is the same. I would think that they probably go on a quarterly basis. We have a whole section dedicated over at the Brooklyn Navy Yard that takes care of all those vessels and makes sure that they're always in proper working order. Every time I go over by there, I know that they're taking something apart, changing something, changing the oil. I wouldn't know the exact scheduling on that, but I would guess it's the same thing quarterly, and then yearly certifications probably that they have to have in order to stay in service.
And how many firefighters do you have on that specific unit?
Depends on the size of the boat. I know on the larger scale boats, we have about 8. On the smaller boats, we'd have 3.
Yeah. I had the great pleasure of going out on one once. We took a ride out, and extremely impressive. I'm not sure, this is the last part of the questioning, but I'm not sure that anyone has area of expertise in like firehouse facilities and any type of maintenance. Would that be something that is under your purview?
Again, we could broadly answer those questions. Being in safety, I get a lot of those different issues that come to us, so I could definitely talk about some of them.
So how often are firehouses visited for regular maintenance to see if they need plumbing or any type of roof work or things of that nature?
Yeah, so we usually do, what we usually would do if we were in the firehouse, if you're working there, is you would put a work order into our buildings and maintenance division. Again, since COVID, they're down a great number of folks and people, like a lot of the different entities. But if they put a work order in, depending upon they'll prioritize it based on how quickly they need to get there to fix it. But they'll respond in to, you know, fix that or repair those as soon as possible. We also get a yearly inspection of our facilities by a deputy chief. Each year, we'll walk through with the members to do that. And I'll let Evan talk about EMS as far as how that goes.
It's a similar setup where as work is needed, you put something in the system and facilities will come out and evaluate it based on priority need. And the state as well also inspects for the EMS stations, I believe, every 5 years.
Okay, great. And you were talking earlier about, you know, safety equipment on their body, you know, radios and such. Do they have locators on their gear as well, in case they're stuck in a building?
Unfortunately, at this time still, no one has developed the technology in order to give us the location of a member exactly. Each mask has a device in it where if we're on the same level as them, we have a pack tracker that can get us to that member if they're in distress. But unfortunately, we don't have anything yet outside of a building, or no vendor has come up with. They could show us if we're on the same level or where they are in a building, and they can't tell us what floor they're on. So depending upon what borough you're operating in, obviously that could be a difficult task. We could see where they are, but we wouldn't know what floor they're on. So the companies are trying to develop it as quickly as possible. We're constantly looking for it. I know the department sends myself and a bunch of people from research and development out to conferences to check with vendors all the time to see what they have, and nobody has really come up with anything yet that would work in New York City. Again, we're a very complex city, being 5 boroughs, completely different construction in each borough, so it's very difficult to find a technology that would work in each and every borough.
I appreciate that. If there are no questions from members of the panel, okay, then I think we can dismiss our.
Would you like to see a demonstration of the robot real quick?
I would love to see a demonstration of the robot
So
dog.
we'll do this real quick. Okay, so this is one of our ground robots. It's made by Boston Dynamics. The model is Spot Explorer, but we named this one Berg. Berg is named after Henry Berg, who was the founder of the ASPCA and also a New Yorker. This robot works in conjunction with another robot, and they could communicate with each other, and both of them carry different sensors to do a specific job. They respond to subterranean incidents, hazardous material incidents, collapsed structures, and they basically represent a response for a low occurrence, high consequence event, something that's very severe. So we've had robots in the past that had tracks, but we found that the quadruped, which makes it look like a dog almost, is advantageous, and it helps to traverse mild to medium terrains up to 12 inches. So it moves in a way that, you know, is effective and can go up and down stairs as well.
Extremely, extremely. And even though he's a robot dog, I can't help but fall in love with you. Thank you so much for that demonstration.
You're welcome. Afterwards, we can do.
Okay, so the panel is dismissed, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get back to work now. Thank you all for coming. Okay, before we begin the public testimony, I just want to read some public comment protocols. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant-at-Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak on today's hearing, please fill out the appearance card with the Sergeant-at-Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will be given 3 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic, the state of the FDNY's equipment. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant-at-Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. For folks testifying via Zoom, which I do not believe we have today. We do? Okay. We do have today. I will call your name when it's your turn to provide testimony, and you will be unmuted at that time. At this time, I'd like to recognize Jim Brosi to testify.
Good morning. My name is Jim Brosi. I am the president of the Uniformed Fire Officers Association, and I appreciate you having this hearing on FDNY equipment. It is our belief that the greatest piece of equipment that the FDNY offers is its personnel.
Just going to ask people to either close the door in the back or we can keep it down a bit. Excuse me, and I'm sorry.
No problem. As I stated, I believe the best piece of equipment the FDNY can offer is its personnel. I come here today before you to discuss the expansion of Citi Field. As it has been proposed, the Citi Field expansion is creating a new neighborhood. And as you said in your testimony prior to this, was that timeline matters. How long does it take to get a piece of equipment? How long does it take to purchase an apparatus? The question is, how far in advance do we have to prepare for a firehouse? We've already seen the impact of Hudson Yards, an area and a neighborhood that did not exist, that increased the number of responses in the surrounding units in an isolated area by somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 runs over the last decade. Those runs will only increase as the expansion increases. They are isolated by access points due to the building and the street construction. Citi Field is an exact replica of Hudson Yards, except more isolated. It has more overlapping transportation from both the Long Island Railroad and the 7 train. It has only local access via Northern Boulevard or the Roosevelt Avenue Bridge. It is isolated by Flushing Meadow Park and is blocked out by the Grand Central Parkway. The units around that area are already doing 7,000 runs. The city has already sought fit to add a hotel as well as a school in the area because, according to the Wilpons, they are developing a neighborhood that did not exist. It is one thing to develop around Barclays Center that was already a highly dense wood-framed area and replace it with high-rise multiple dwellings, which is why you've only seen a moderate impact in that running. What you will see in the Citi Field Flushing area is you will see a depletion of services, a dramatic safety impact, because those units cannot absorb any more running. They are already somewhere in the area of 5,800 runs. The distance from those places will increase response times, and the vertical impact of those high-rise buildings will make it very difficult to reach those occupants. There is very little ladder company access. It is surrounded by 2 single-engine companies, and there will be very little support for those people who want to investigate these emergencies. We have done studies on this through a collaboration with the Columbia University, where we had proposed that prior to a zoning change, that the city makes a provision either through a zoning variance or through some other agreement where they purchase property, even if there isn't an immediate use for a firehouse, that we anticipate as the population grows, as the running becomes too overburdensome on the surrounding units, that firehouse or that EMS station gets developed. But unless we build that in advance, as we did in the back end of, say, Lincoln Center, where we proposed a firehouse that sits behind, where it does not aesthetically take away from the area, people aren't affected by the noise, but that these facilities are available. Once the site is built, just like in Hudson Yards, there is no place to add a firehouse, and the property is too expensive for the city to purchase. This must be planned now. We must put this on our timeline. We've discussed every other aspect of the property except fire protection and EMS protection. And that's the number one thing you should provide, other than medical facilities, schooling, and policing, when you develop a neighborhood, especially one being developed from scratch.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I was unaware that a firehouse was not part of that plan, and I will certainly have a conversation with Councilmember Moya, and, you know, because we just did vote on this at the last stated meeting, and this is something that really should be put into place. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you very much for your time.
I'd like now to call on Adam Roberts from the Community Housing Improvement Program on mute. You should be able to unmute yourself, Mr. Roberts.
Starting time.
Thank you for holding this hearing today. I am Adam Roberts, Policy Director for the Community Housing Improvement Program, also known as CHIP. We represent New York's housing providers, including apartment building owners and managers. We are here to express our concern about the lack of sufficient equipment for FDNY to fight fires in apartment buildings. In particular, it appears as though FDNY does not have the equipment necessary to combat the sharp rise in e-bike fires. Currently, when illegal lithium battery is discovered in an apartment building, FDNY requires building staff to safely remove the battery. DEP then requires the building owners to hire a third-party service to dispose of the battery. Building staff lack the equipment and expertise to handle the proper removal of lithium batteries. Even if they were to have better equipment and training, they lack the legal right to access an occupied apartment. Likewise, we have safety concerns about the city requiring that the disposal of such deadly technology be outsourced. The only explanation for such an illogical system of dealing with e-bike fires is that the FDNY lacks the necessary equipment to deal with them. We do not know what equipment is needed, though we have heard of many promising ideas. Nevertheless, it is clear that a well-equipped FDNY is in a better position to handle the removal and disposal of lithium batteries than building staff and third-party disposal companies. Furthermore, placing the onus on buildings to deal with e-bike fires is a financial burden they cannot afford, particularly for rent-stabilized buildings. Net operating income, which is the amount of income a unit produces before debt service, is dropping dangerously fast throughout the city. Therefore, owners cannot afford to bear the cleanup costs and rising insurance rates that come from dealing with e-bike fires. In the Bronx, net operating income for pre-1974 rent-stabilized buildings, which are those that do not receive 421A or any form of government subsidy, dropped nearly 20% in 1 year. FDNY has the training in dealing with e-bike fires and the legal ability to access occupied apartments with lithium batteries. Therefore, we need the council to ensure FDNY has the necessary equipment to prevent these fires from proliferating. Again, thank you for holding this hearing today.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Before we close out, I would just like to recognize that we were joined by Councilmember Jim Gennaro via Zoom and Councilmember Kevin Riley. At this point, and Oswald Feliz. At this point, if there are no questions, then I will close this hearing. Thank you all who testified. I'd also like to thank Rachel Cordero, our supervising attorney, Josh Kingsley, our counsel to this committee, Will Hongash, our senior analyst, and my amazing chief of staff, Ms. Phyllis Cirillo, and to everyone who testified here today. Thank you so much.